Many years ago, when humans and dragons lived in the same land, life was far from easy. People lived in constant fear, and to survive, they had to offer the most beautiful maidens as sacrifices. Everything began when 5 young women from the village were chosen. Their hair was braided, and they were tied to small boats that were then set adrift across a frozen lake. They're completely alone, they waited for their fate. Meanwhile, the villagers sang a terrifying song, and at that very moment, the dragon would appear on the horizon to choose its victim. One day, when one of those young women was taken by the creature, her beloved, a knight, decided to go after her. After a long journey, he finally found the dragon's lair. But he was too late. The young woman had already died. Filled with rage and grief, the knight charged at the monster and managed to pierce its neck with his spear. From that day on, he freed his people from terror and became known as the Great Dragon's Lair. As the years passed, all that horror slowly faded into legend. What had once been a sacrifice gradually turned into a tradition, and eventually became a wedding ceremony. Decades later, the big day finally arrives. Igor, the grandson of the famous Dragon's Lair, is about to marry the Duke's youngest daughter. The entire city is excited because it is the most important event they have had in a very long time. The young bride is Mira, who is getting ready with the help of her older sister, Yaroslava. But unlike everyone else, Mira is not excited about the wedding at all. While her sister braids her hair, she comments that she wishes she had lived during the age of dragons so she could marry a real hero and not his grandson. Yaroslava does not take the comment well. Annoyed, she accuses Mira of always living in her own little world. Mira quickly fires back, saying that Yaroslava is only jealous because she still has not found a husband, causing the argument to grow even more intense. In the middle of the fight, the prince enters the room and tells Mira to hurry, since all the guests are waiting for her. Even though she does not want to get married, Mira decides to go through with it for her father's sake. She believes that, with time, she might eventually learn to love Igor. The ceremony begins by following the ancient tradition. As part of the ritual, the bride lies down in a wooden boat that is pulled across a frozen lake. While Igor drags the boat forward, all the guests begin singing the old song dedicated to the dragon's lair. But just when everything seems normal, something unexpected happens. Out of nowhere, a dragon appears on the horizon. Within seconds, chaos breaks loose. The creature tries to take Mira away, but Igor manages to stop the boat with a rope. For a brief moment, it seems like everything will be fine. But before Mira can reach solid ground, the dragon grabs her once again and carries her off to its lair. When Mira wakes up inside the dark and filthy place, she remembers the horror of the journey and realizes that she has been wounded by the monster's claws. Desperate, she tries to escape by climbing the walls, but suddenly notices a small wild creature staring at her, trying to intimidate her. Frightened, she grabs a rock to defend herself. But at that moment, she hears the voice of a young man telling her to put it down, or things will only get worse. The creature walks closer, sniffs her, and then leaves. That is when Armen, the young man who spoke to her, finally appears. Without wasting any time, Mira begs him to help her escape, but he makes it clear that escaping the dragon is impossible. That is when she realizes that he is trapped there as well. When Armen asks about the song they were singing, Mira explains that it was her fiancé's idea, since everyone believed dragons no longer existed. But Armen reveals something unsettling. That song was what called the dragon, and because of it, she was chosen. Noticing that she is injured, Armen gives her a kind of herbal paste and tells her to apply it to her wounds. And in that moment, for the very first time, their eyes meet, marking the beginning of something important. Determined to return home, Mira asks Armen to help distract the dragon so she can escape. But he bluntly tells her that getting out of that place alive is practically impossible. Furious, she accuses him of being a coward. Upset, she covers the small hole they had been using to talk with a stone. Even so, she refuses to give up. Mira starts coming up with a plan and makes an extreme decision. She cuts off her hair to create a makeshift rope and tries to climb to the top. But just as she is about to attempt it, the dragon appears and lets out a terrifying roar that leaves her frozen in fear. When the creature finally leaves, Mira rushes to the wall and calls for Armen, but there is no answer. She thinks he abandoned her, and that completely crushes her. Still, she gathers her strength and begins climbing, but her improvised rope snaps, and she fails to reach the top. Desperate, she starts smashing the wall with a rock, until she finally manages to open a small hole. Without thinking twice, she crawls through it in search of Armen. As she moves forward, she spots an exit and walks toward the light. But at that exact moment, the dragon appears again and starts chasing her, using its enormous size to intimidate her. Mira manages to hide inside a cave, and the dragon tries to attack her by breathing fire, but it does not work. So instead, it sends Otets, the small creature, to capture her. But by the time Otets reaches her, Mira is already standing at the edge of a cliff, ready to throw herself into the sea. That is when Armen appears, trying to convince her not to jump. But when she sees the small animal obeying him, she immediately realizes that he is on the dragon's side as well. Terrified, she backs away, but takes a wrong step and falls off the cliff. During the fall, she suddenly feels someone grab her. It is Armen, and then something incredible happens. His body begins to burn, and within seconds, he transforms into a dragon. Realizing he will not have enough time to fly, he uses his own body to shield Mira during the fall. Thanks to that, she survives completely unharmed, but he's left gravely injured. Seeing him lying motionless, Mira begins screaming for help, unaware that Agor has gathered several men to rescue her. The problem is that in the middle of the thick fog, they lose their way and cannot reach the island. When Mira realizes nobody is coming, she approaches the dragon and watches him return to his human form. Furious, she decides to take advantage of the situation. Armen is so badly injured that he cannot even stand, so she grabs a rock with the intention of eliminating him. But at that moment, she sees Otets desperately approaching, trying to help his master. That sight makes her hesitate. Even though she does not want to, Mira changes her mind and decides to help him instead. Using a piece of cloth, she drags him back to the cave. Once they are somewhere safer, she watches his body trying to transform again, surrounded by flames. But he fails and collapses unconscious once more. After making sure he is still alive, Mira heads down to the seashore and discovers an old shipwreck. Her plan is to use it to escape the island, but before she can leave, she notices a powerful storm approaching, so she decides to wait. She returns to the cave, improvises a shelter with pieces of cloth to protect herself from the rain, and also tends to Armen's wounds. To keep warm, she lies beside him and uses his body heat. And the next morning, she wakes up next to a lit campfire. After eating the fruit Armen leaves for her, Mira goes looking for him and once again tries to convince him to take her back home. But he tells her he cannot. Then Armen decides to tell her his story. He explains that many years ago, he was brought to the island to live with his father, who was also a dragon. Despite being isolated from the rest of the world, he was happy. He deeply admired his father and dreamed of becoming like him someday. But everything changed when a ship arrived at the island. Armen was excited, believing he would finally meet other people. But instead, he witnessed them killing his father. That day, something inside him broke, and a deep desire for revenge was born within him. Shortly afterward, he experienced his very first transformation. In that moment, Armen's mind was flooded with memories, not only his own, but those of all his ancestors. He saw every maiden who had been sacrificed throughout the years, and realized something horrifying: his father was not a hero, he was a monster. From that moment on, Armen decided he would never follow the same path. For years, he fought against his own instincts to keep the dragon inside him under control. And he succeeded, until the day of Mira's wedding. The moment he heard the ritual song, he completely lost control. And by the time he came back to his senses, he had already captured a bride. After telling her all of this, Armen explains that he cannot take her home because he still cannot fully control the dragon. Even so, He asks her to be patient because sooner or later a dragon's lair will come to rescue her. And when that happens, he will not try to stop him. But there is another problem. The island is surrounded by a mysterious fog. According to legend, the only way to reach it is if the heart of a young woman in love is waiting for you. Which means Igor will only be able to find the island if Mira truly loves him. While waiting for that possible rescue, Mira decides to help Armen recover from his injuries. In return, he offers her a safer place to hide in case the dragon appears again. As the days pass, the two begin spending more and more time together. Armen even searches the island for chests filled with human belongings to make the place more comfortable for her. Little by little, they transform the cold, lonely place into something that almost feels like a home. Mira, meanwhile, introduces Armen to the small joys of life that he had never learned to appreciate. One day, they take a walk along the beach, where she watches flower petals dancing through the wind, and the moment feels strangely special. Later, when she returns, she finds Otets digging through her bag. Even though she is slowly becoming comfortable on the island, Mira still does not know if she can fully trust Armen. That is why she secretly prepares a bag filled with supplies, just in case she ever needs to escape. That night, she invites Armen into her tent, and the two spend hours talking together. As he looks around, he realizes the place has never felt so warm and welcoming before, and he understands that it is all because of her. As a way of thanking her, Armen has a surprise prepared. He takes her to the top of the mountain and launches fireworks into the sky. As Mira watches the night light up with countless colors, she cannot help but feel happy and closer to him than ever before. But that same night, while sleeping, she has a nightmare. She feels a spark on her face and suddenly wakes up in fear, searching for Armen. While looking for him, she comes face to face with the dragon. But this time, something is different. The creature does not attack her. In fact, it almost seems to allow her to come closer. However, within seconds, it loses control and corners her. Just when everything seems about to end terribly, Mira wakes up. It was all just a dream. As soon as she opens her eyes, she sees Armen standing in front of her. He tells her he heard her screaming and rushed over to help. Mira explains that she dreamed about the dragon and admits that she is afraid he might hurt her someday. With complete seriousness, Armen promises her that he will never allow that to happen. He tells her that, thanks to her, he feels like a different person. Later, after he leaves, Mira hears him playing the instrument she gave him. And in that moment, she realizes something important. She is starting to fall in love with him. The next morning, after bathing beneath the waterfall, Mira gets dressed and chooses a beautiful red gown, clearly hoping to impress Armen. Meanwhile, he is on his way to see her with a bouquet of flowers when he suddenly feels the dragon inside him beginning to awaken. Terrified, he runs toward the cliffside to get as far away from her as possible and avoid putting her in danger. But his plan does not go as expected, because Mira manages to find him. Desperate, Armen tells her that things cannot continue like this, that it is dangerous, and that Igor needs to arrive as soon as possible to take her away. However, Mira replies that her fiancé will never find the island. Then, trying to lighten the mood, she shows him a kite she made from scraps of cloth and asks him to help her fly it. As the kite rises into the sky, the two slowly grow closer, until their hands finally touch. At that moment, Armen once again feels the dragon trying to take control, so he quickly pulls away before Mira notices anything. He locks himself inside the crack in the rocks that he uses like a cage to contain himself and, while struggling against his monstrous side, begins playing the instrument Mira gave him in an attempt to calm down. Once he finally regains control, he decides to speak with her and tell her something important: how a dragon is born. He explains that there are no remains of the sacrificed maidens on the island because their bodies were consumed by fire. And from those ashes, a new dragon is born. To prevent Mira from suffering the same fate, Armen makes a painful decision. He tells her that the next morning, she must leave in a boat and that the wind will carry her out to sea. After saying this, he walks away and locks himself up once again. transforming back into the dragon, leaving her with no other choice. So the following morning, even though she does not want to, Mira decides to obey him. She prepares the boat, raises the sails, and leaves the island behind, along with Otets and Armen. Meanwhile, out at sea, Igor and his crew continue searching for the island, but the thick fog refuses to let them pass. After spending several days lost, Igor finally decides to give up and orders everyone to head back. However, Captain Andre refuses. He reminds Igor that he promised Igor's father he would protect the honor of their family, so he wants to continue the search. Andre suggests that Igor should get some rest, but Igor no longer wants to risk his life. He even threatens the captain with a sword, insisting that Mira is probably already dead and that they need to leave before the same thing happens to them. At that moment, the crew spots a signal in the sky and prepares to face the dragon. But to everyone's surprise, what emerges from the fog is Mira's boat. At last, they manage to rescue her. Once aboard, Andre wants to sail to the island and kill the dragon, but Mira stops him. She tells them that the creature is no longer alive and asks Igor to take her back home instead. Although he is not entirely convinced, the captain agrees and the ship finally turns around. Days later, back in the city, Mira sets a new date for the wedding. Once again, Yaroslava helps her prepare for the ceremony. Meanwhile, on the island, Armen remains alone, remembering the moments he shared with her. Even though he is consumed by sadness, deep down, all he wants is for Mira to be happy. Before the wedding, the Duke speaks privately with his daughter and tells her something important. She no longer has to marry out of obligation. He advises her to choose the man she truly loves because he wants her to live a happy life without regrets. Finally, the ceremony begins. Once again, Mira lies inside the boat, dressed in white, while Igor pulls her across the lake according to tradition. But this time, something changes. Mira suddenly stands up in the middle of the ritual and stops everything. In front of everyone, she confesses that she cannot marry Igor because she does not love him. And not only that, she also reveals that she is in love with a dragon. Without caring about what anyone else thinks, she begins singing the ancient song. On the island, Armen, who was just about to throw himself off a cliff, hears her voice. He had decided to end his life because he did not want to live without her. When Mira finishes singing, she waits, hoping the dragon will appear. But seconds pass, and nobody comes. As everyone stands there in shock, unsure of how to react, Igor orders the men to pull Mira out of the lake. But before anyone can reach her, the dragon appears once again. Within seconds, it captures the young woman and flies away with her. Despite all the chaos, the Duke finds comfort in knowing that his daughter chose to follow her true feelings. Igor, however, cannot accept it. He grabs a spear and prepares to attack the dragon, determined to stop it. Yaroslava screams at him not to hurt her sister, but blinded by rage, he insists on taking revenge, even knowing he could put Mira's life at risk. Before he can do anything worse, Andre stops him and knocks him unconscious, taking the spear away from him. Meanwhile, back on the island, the dragon carries Mira to the very place where, for years, the maidens had been sacrificed. Everything seems destined to repeat the same tragic story. Armen, fully transformed into the dragon, is about to unleash his flames and complete the ritual. But at that exact moment, Mira does something completely unexpected. She walks toward him, gently holds his face, and kisses him. The dragon suddenly stops, confused. That is when Mira realizes something important. He has always been feared, but he has never known what it feels like to be loved. Without fear, she tells him that she loves him exactly as he is. She even kneels before him, willing to give herself up if that is truly her fate. But instead of attacking her, the dragon's fury fades away. Slowly, the creature lowers its head and rests it beside her. And from that moment on, everything changes. Armen and Mira never separate again. As time passes, they build a family together and eventually have a daughter. Years later, we see Armen telling the little girl stories about dragons, including the story of how he met her mother. After putting her to bed, he asks Otets to watch over her while he goes out with Mira, And just as the sun begins to disappear beyond the horizon, Armen transforms once more. But this time, there is no fear. Mira smiles, climbs onto his back, and together, they soar across the sky, finally free. Don't forget to like and subscribe and let me know what you think about this movie.